Okay, so this week we are going to look at the incredible cell, and this one will not be a long podcast at all. We have covered quite a bit of this before, mainly back in the fall when we first looked at cells, so this will be review for most of you. Just follow along with the sheet that was given, and especially at the end when you get to the parts of the cell. Okay, we're going to start here with the ultimate question, and that is, what is the purpose of a cell? So the ultimate question that we are looking at over this podcast is, what is the purpose of a cell? So to start, we're going to look at the three main basics of a cell, and that is, it is the basic unit of all life. Remember when we looked at the hierarchy, it goes from cell to tissue to organ system, and finally to you, the organism. So the smallest structure of anything, any living organism, is a cell. Second thing, all organisms are made up of cells, and each cell is specialized. So that means your red blood cell does not do the same thing as your muscle cell. That allows you to do so many things when each cell can specialize in something. All right. One aspect that you need to remember here is there is something called a cell theory, and that is the theory of what a cell does. So, all plants and animals are composed of, take a guess, cells. All life functions are performed by cells, and cells come from other cells. Reproducing. So that means in order to have more cells, your cells must split and reproduce. Just like your red blood cells. We know that you produce so many red blood cells each day, each month, each year. And in order to do so, you have to reproduce cells. And all life processes require energy. And where does this all take place? In cells. So those are the four components of the cell theory, which is what your cells do, what is the purpose of a cell. That's the cell theory. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, what's the difference between a theory and, say, a fact? Shouldn't these four parts of the cell theory be a fact? No, not necessarily, because a theory is a widely accepted idea. But it's not a fact because a fact is something that's proven over and over, time after time, under controlled conditions. Think of a theory like a vague fact. So this is just a theory. Similar to a fact, but not 100% fact. Think 90% fact. That's a theory. Okay, now looking at the processes of living cells, what do your cells actually do? Well, they bring you nutrition. So that means they bring you energy. They digest food, which means they must break down food and get nutrients. If you look over here at this picture, you can see a cell absorbing your nutrients, which brings us to the next point. Absorption. Absorbing nutrients. They must excrete anything they don't need. Like your kidneys and your digestive system excrete any waste products, your cells excrete any waste they don't need. Response. They must respond to the environment, how they're going to adapt. So if you're in an environment that is extremely cold, your cells will adapt accordingly. And if you're in an environment that is extremely warm, your cells are going to adapt accordingly. If you're in an environment that dehydrates you, your cells will adapt. That is called, favorite word here, homeostasis. Maintaining a stable environment condition in your body. And finally, cells must reproduce. So those are the processes of your living cells. 6 of them. And the individual we have to thank for all of this is Mr. Robert Hooke. And this is the best picture I can get for you on him. He's the first one who looked at cells, and he's the first one to create the 90% fact, the theory known as the cell theory. Okay, now looking at your cell here. What are the parts of a cell? You're going to need to know these, and on your sheet, you're going to want to label these, following this diagram shown, and I am going to tell you what exactly each part of your cell does. We're going to start here with your cytoplasm, and think of the cytoplasm as a gel or jello, whichever makes more sense for you, and that is what holds the organelles in place, and it moves organelles around the cell if they need to be moved. So it's this clear liquid in here. The vacuole stores any food, it stores water, minerals, and any waste products before they're actually excreted from your cell. So those are the vacuoles, and a vacuole is right over here in the corner. We have the nucleus, and the nucleus is, think of it like the control center of the cell. It regulates all the activities, anything that comes into the cell, comes out of the cell. It's the powerhouse of the cell. And the powerhouse is found in the center of the cell. We have ribosomes, and that's where proteins are made that help within your body. So these are the small dots that you see scattered around like pepper within your cell. Finally, you got the mitochondria, and that is where food is broken down so you can get your much needed energy. If you did not have mitochondria, you would not have energy. So that's an extremely important organelle in your body. Think of this one as the actual fuel to your system. It's like the gas in a car. It powers you to go. That is the mitochondria. Cell membrane, we've talked about this before. It's just the protective outer coating. It's like if you look at an egg and you crack the shell open, after you hard boil it, there's a thin, clear outer coating. That would be your cell membrane. And finally, we have a lysosome, and that is what actually breaks down your food. So you have the mitochondria that breaks down some food to provide you energy. You have lysosomes, which also break down some food for energy. But they also do something important. They break down any old cell parts, and they contain digestive enzymes that will also help break down food. So the lysosome and the mitochondria kind of go hand in hand. So those are the parts of the animal cell. Then you have your, obviously, plant cell. Same exact organelles. However, there is a cell wall. That cell wall is what keeps it stiff and rigid and gives it its shape. Otherwise, you're going to have some plants that kind of flop over. And then you obviously have the chloroplast. And that chloroplast is what captures the energy from sunlight and gives the plant its fuel. That's the only difference between the plant cell and the animal cell. So go ahead and label those on your sheet with the functions that I just said, and you'll be good to go. And finally, to end, like I said, it was a quick podcast. You have a question. Develop 3 analogies. So what do the role of the parts of the cell compare to? For example, the nucleus could be similar to a security guard, since it controls what enters and what doesn't. What could, say, the mitochondria be compared to? Or a lysosome? Or a ribosome? So 3 analogies, and that is your bonus question. And if you have any other questions, just let me know. And that ends the podcast. Again, we looked at what is the purpose of a cell. We covered the cell theory. Mr. Hook, who found out about the cell theory, and obviously the parts of the cell. And that is the incredible cell.